Blood is an episode about spree killings, and so it's no surprise that we begin at the post office and get a little taste of why that might happen there. This poor schlub, well, pretty much does nothing but sit there all day and type 5-digit numbers into a keypad. And worst of all is that he's going to be fired from that job. Yeah, where do you go when you've been fired from a job that shitty? I think all that's left is cage cleaning in infected monkey labs.
I mean, your work is first rate, and like I said, you're a good guy. But you know the story. Cutbacks and seniority, and you're a low man on the pole.
But there seems to be no stopping sequestration. This is one of those awesome workplace paradoxes, up there with no one will hire you without prior experience, so you never get any. The ones without seniority are always the first ones to go, which means you have to get a new job after that, which means you'll have the less seniority at this new job, so you'll be the first to go when they start laying people off too. But hey, at least he gets to go back to work at the keypad, huh? But it looks like that might be programmed for evil. Yep, flashing messages that he should go on a killing spree. I really thought they worked that software bug out. 1994 fell in the midst of a rash of headline-grabbing shootings in post offices, notable especially for two events happening on the same day at different post offices. It's the reason that going postal became the phrase for that. It describes somebody going nuts, going to their place of work, and making with the shooting and or killing thing. This isn't about post office specifically, but the episode's primary focus on this employee shows that phenomenon was likely the inspiration. You gotta feel for the guy, too. I mean, look at him. He looks like a human version of Droopy. After the truth is out there, we again find somebody seeing evil messages, but it's just this guy who's being told by the elevator that they're all going to suffocate unless he kills all the other passengers. And who says machines aren't helpful? Mulder's called in because this guy's killing isn't an isolated incident, and in an historically low crime area to suddenly be worse than Detroit, D.C., and L.A. put together? Yeah, that's a real problem for the sheriff and his group, whose primary job up until now was watching out for excessive teenage slang. All the killers are dead from a condition known as shot by cops, but none of them seemed violent right up until they went on a public murder spree. Meanwhile, our poor postal employee is still being stalked by machines as he's out looking for work, just trying to get through the day without killing somebody, but the ATM is now telling him that he should take someone's gun and just start shooting up the place. But still he resists that impulse and runs off. We start to clue in that the guy has a thing about blood, and the ubiquitous blood drive signs are really getting on his nerves. Yet he's still managing to resist, which is great. Okay, well, yeah, it's not too often that we need to applaud somebody for just say no to random mass homicide, but, it's become that kind of town now. Case in point, Bonnie here. She's terrified of the mechanic working on her car because it's late, they're alone together, and she has a pathological fear of rape. Now, being screwed while visiting the mechanic is pretty much to be expected, but from Bonnie's POV, this whole thing is just horribly intense. It's like she's journeying into the crypt keeper's cellar just talking with this guy. You get the feeling that she'd rather be doing anything else, including river dance in a minefield, than be here. I only mention this because it was a big deal at the time, but Bonnie's played by Kimberly Ashland Geer, an adult film actress still working in that business when this was being done, and I don't have to tell you why that's a big deal. Which is good because I have no idea, but a big deal it was. Anyway, the diagnostic test reveals diminished horsepower, serious oil leakage, and pending rape and murder. So Bonnie clocks the guy and, after a struggle, kills him with an old-fashioned oil can spout. Yeah, they should have put guards on those things. Oh, wait, they did. I guess this guy just hates safety. Mulder checks through all the invoices at the mechanic's shop and finds out that one car was brought in for smash dash readouts and figures that that's probably his suspect. He's quite anxious to talk to Bonnie, knowing his porn habits, he's probably a big fan. And soon the microwave is in on this conspiracy too, telling her that she's going to have to kill them to protect herself. And soon she slashes Mulder with a knife. And while her straddling him was probably how he hoped this whole thing would end, Sheriff Cockblocker guns her down before she can make with the stabbing. All that's left now is the post-mortem, and Scully concludes that this woman has been under such severe stress for so long that her adrenal glands have been crying. She also finds a chemical, LSDM. And of course, M stands for murder. Scully thinks this LSDM reacts with adrenaline and or stress-related chemicals to cause this person to lose their shit. like being the Hulk, except it happens when you're terrified and not angry, and you don't actually change, so basically it's not like the Hulk. I just watched Avengers with my kids again, so I got Hulk on the mind. Meanwhile, Droopy is trying fruitlessly not to have his life suck and failing as he tries to apply for yet another job and doesn't even get as far as, "Can I have an application?" before the lady just walks away. The TVs flip out, showing him one horrific real-world image after the next, after the next, after the next. Must be tuned into True TV. They tell him to look behind him, and look at what we got here. Guns! And so tastefully done, too. Oil can spouts are what little housewives use, right? Real men use guns. I guess this does prove that television can lead to real-world violence. The next day, Mulder's out jogging when he spots some city workers dumping dead flies and figures that's weird enough to bring in the lone gunman. They figure it's the LSDM, an experimental anti-pest spray meant to keep bugs away from plants by stimulating their fear response, and then they show him a video to demonstrate this. Actually, they showed DDT, a legally approved of chemical spray to fight malaria that was sprayed with full knowledge of the public that was later proven to be harmful, and say it's pretty much the same as this. An unapproved chemical spray that fights plant-eating insects that nobody publicly knows about and may or may not be harmful, we don't know. Or, in other words, about as accurate a comparison as my Hulk analogy, but let's just accept it and move on. Mulder goes out at night to watch for it, and sure enough gets a heavy dose of it from a crop-dusting helicopter. Yeah, congratulations! You now have every type of cancer. But you should be malaria-free. Scully comes down to help check him over. In Season 2, they are no longer partners, and that's why Mulder's been doing all this alone out here. And he confronts the mayor of this town and Marvel comic book creator Larry Winter, seen here in disguise because he's not wearing his Stan Lee glasses. He says they're doing the spraying to save the crops so the town won't die, and there's no proof this chemical is harmful. Something that Scully points out is actually backed up, at least as far as mad behavior goes, by Mulder himself, because with that kind of exposure, he should be convinced that his clothes were trying to smother him and that the sky will swallow him up if he doesn't keep his guard up. But Mulder has an idea inspired by the words "do it" written across the screen and this woman's boobs. Subliminal suggestion, brief flashes of words or images to subconsciously compel someone. In fact, the X-Files game itself employed this on its players. It would flash a word like blood or murder on the screen to try to make the player feel more anxious or paranoid while playing to help fit the mood. It's a controversial topic, subliminal messages. Personally, I don't think must drink Coca-Cola.
The insecticide heightened their already existent phobia to an unbearable level. Then the electronic devices relayed messages that told them specifically what to do with their fear in order to alleviate it. The messages were relayed purposely.
By who?
Evil people, duh! Who else? Men who sit at long tables in poorly lit rooms full of cigar smoke and talk about how they're going to control the world! Yeah, Mulder's a big bag of paranoia right now.
He's probably one of those people that thinks Elvis is dead.
Yeah, Elvis isn't dead. He's undead. Oh, I want some of them deep-fried brains. Thank you very much.
I think this area is being subjected to a controlled experiment.
Unlike a lot of episodes, this one deliberately does not show whether or not Mulder is right. Which is probably good, because if he is, it seems ridiculously excessive even for the X-Files that this kind of thing would be happening. Whoever was behind this conspiracy would have to tamper with everything from watches to microwaves, all on the off chance that they might need to get a message to somebody under some kind of circumstance. And that incident with Droopy and the television is perhaps the most glaring example of how these people weren't subtle about it. If anybody else would have spotted that, or the messages in the elevator or whatever, it'd possibly tip people off after all that effort they went to. To me, it seems far more likely that the people are just hallucinating and seeing messages that aren't really there, rather than some cabal pulling a Truman Show on this town just to try to get them to kill each other. At least if they were going to do that, they could pull some kind of Monsters Are Due on Maple Street with a whole lot less effort if that's what you're hoping to get out of this. Which brings us back to poor Droopy, who has been resisting the urge to murder people, but he bought a gun anyway, just in case. You don't want to have a homicidal urge and not have anything to kill with. Today's paranoid psychopath needs to plan ahead. Mulder scored a victory in that Winter has agreed to do a check of everyone that might have been exposed, except this will require drawing blood. Remember with Ed, that's his real name, what he's afraid of? Yeah, somebody is coming for his blood. That's not the kind of thing that he wants at his front door. He wants a tiny little man saying, home again, lickety split. The calculator tells him blood too, which freaks him out since normally it only says boobies. And the watch, why did I get the Murder Trucks 5000 model? Mulder and Scully soon pay Ed's house a visit because he wasn't tested, and they discover the signs that the ding-dong's going to go bang-bang. What follows is the famous kill spree trope, based on a 60s incident with Charles Whitman, who went up a tower and started picking people off on a campus, until he was finally taken down by a Texas law enforcement officer named Houston McCoy, because Tex McLawman was already taken. For Ed, it makes a kind of sense. It's very hard to be a violent killer if you're terrified of the sight of blood. That's kind of an occupational hazard. So being way up there is great because he's got a good chance of not seeing any of that stuff. They arrive just as Ed starts the shooting, but as Mulder heads up there, he slips and falls, tearing open the wound that Bonnie gave him, which now means he's got blood running down his arm. That's going to really help calm Ed down, won't it? Luckily, Ed doesn't seem to really want to be doing any of this. He fires off tons of shots, but we don't see any sign that he hits anybody, and he almost seems to want Mulder to shoot him to stop him from hurting anybody. Luckily, Mulder can take him in alive, and he gets a final message from the evil syndicate for no reason other than to mess with him. Or, far more likely, he's having a hallucination because he was baptized by a crop duster. Blood gets a stamp of recommended. Its atmosphere is absolutely chilling. You understand why ordinary people will suddenly become violent in this piece, and Ed's slow descent into madness is crushing to witness. The story's also got great narration by Mulder and Scully giving their reports that provides info that only heightens the tension. Ultimately, though, the story seems to peter out about 2/3 of the way through, and the rest, while not bad or anything, just doesn't seem to live up to what it started with. It's great, but it just seems like it's missing something.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
She's tasty.
You know, Frohickey, it's men like you that give perversion a bad name.